Let me introduce Arida. Just like 10,000 other people from Indonesia and the Philippines this year, Arida is about to leave her home country to settle in Hong Kong, where about 320,000 domestic helpers, mostly women, cook, clean and look after the wealthy families that employ them. A great majority of those women leave their home country in the hope of finding a better salary in Hong Kong to be able to send money back to their families. Now, because of her special status of foreign domestic helper, Arida has to find an employer in Hong Kong via a placement agency in order to be granted a working visa. She will then be required to sign documents for her new working contract without even being able to read or retain a copy of those documents. By this contract, agencies are legally allowed to charge her a commission of up to 10% of her first month's salary in order to repay the cost of finding her a new employer. However, in reality, agencies often charge domestic helpers far more money, which they justify to be the expenses of the training they receive back in their home country. As most foreign domestic helpers who have just started a new job, Arida cannot afford to pay these fees. As a result, Arida's agency will take her to a money lending company and force her to take out a loan. The real problem is that these money lenders will charge Arida extremely high interest rates, which will even accumulate her debt. Through these expensive loans, employment agencies hike commissions by using money lenders as intermediaries. It often takes several years for domestic helpers to repay the loan and the high interest rates. Most of the time, the repayment is made by cash, through 7-Eleven stores for example, making it impossible to trace the money back to the account. This way, nobody can ever prove a relationship between agencies and money lenders, and therefore nobody can sue them for violating the law that limits commissions to 10% of the worker's wage. Arida and other domestic helpers in Hong Kong are trapped in this dead-end situation, which is led by an illegal collusion between employment agencies, money lenders and employers. And unfortunately for Arida, the bad news don't even stop here. In fact, she will soon realize that her wage and working conditions are significantly different from what she had been promised by the recruitment agencies. Now, what about working conditions? First, Arida is underpaid. By having to repay her loan and the interest rate that go with it, she is left with almost nothing at the end of the month and still has to send a part of what is left to help her family back in her home country. It is also common for Arida to endure excessive working hours. She works on average 17 hours per day, 6 or 7 days a week. Then Arida is forced to live at her employer's estate, where she often experiences abuse, harassment and violence. Indeed, as a woman, she is most vulnerable to physical and sexual assault as well as food and sleep deprivation. Under the 2-week rule policy, the domestic worker is required to return to her home country within 2 weeks of the termination of her contract. This gives the employer the power to terminate the working visa whenever he pleases it and discourage domestic helpers from filing any complaints. So what is the government doing about it? The Hong Kong government claims that it attaches a great importance to protecting the rights of foreign domestic helpers, but it fails to recognize these practices as forced labor and debt bondage. Gaps in the law and policy failures help to perpetuate this situation. This is why we have come with a set of practical and implementable solutions. First, we believe that a governmental department dedicated to foreign domestic helpers affairs should be created in order to centralize all the decisions and measures taken in regards to domestic helpers. Then, Hong Kong's Legislative Council should uphold international obligations with sending country governments in order to ensure a harmonization of regulations and practices on the international scale. We also find it necessary to implement tight monitoring of employment agencies and money lending companies and define severe economic sanctions for those who violate the law. Finally, the government should increase investigation and prosecution of abusive employers via regular controls and well-defined sanctions. But suggesting new laws and regulations won't be enough to change these long-running practices. If we really want to put an end to this situation, we have to raise awareness among the general public of Hong Kong. Now you know the story, please don't ignore it, change is in your hands.